Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fifth lecture of Paraspar Sutradhar series. Today we have Dr. Sangeeta Telang, who will speak on building a career in the field of intellectual property. As some of you might be knowing, in this series, we are tracing the journey of individuals who have made their careers outside and beyond academia. Before we begin, let me give a brief introduction of the speaker today. Sangeeta Telang is currently a senior search and analysis specialist with CHR Hansen, a Danish biotech company. She holds a PhD in microbiology, followed by added qualification in intellectual property rights. She is also a registered patent agent with the Indian Patent Office. Her expertise in the life science, combined with her experience with the intellectual property rights, enables her a holistic approach towards intellectual property rights and aids her to offer advice on customized intellectual property solutions. We're very happy to have you today, Sangeeta. May I now request you to deliver your talk?
So to start with, I'm basically trained as a process biotechnologist. I hold a PhD in microbiology, which I completed at National Chemical Laboratory. And like all enthusiastic scientists, I too envisaged a career in this field. And Dr. Kiran Mazumdar was always my inspiration. So Kiran, I mean, right from early college days, I read all sorts of articles, and she was an inspiration in the field of biotechnology, which is when I decided that I'll train in this particular field when I was choosing a career. And after I completed my PhD, I had a wonderful opportunity of working in Biocon. Of course, there I joined their R&D team, and I was involved in, typically what an active scientist does, optimizing parameters and, the bench work that is involved with an early research scientist. But unfortunately, I was unable to pursue my career in Biocon after some time because there are certain circumstances in life wherein you take certain decisions that are more broad-based than just career. So my husband was offered an opportunity to pursue his career in Indonesia, and my son was also barely 3 at that point of time. So as it is, while working in Biocon, the long hours of commute, I think everyone in Bangalore is very familiar with how grueling the traffic is and what typically, the commute entails. And being a bench worker, you're expected to be there in the office. There was no such system of, work from home or something. And definitely as a scientist, you cannot do that. So he too my son too didn't really enjoy these long hours of absence. So all in all, as a family, we took a decision of making a shift to Indonesia, which meant that I had to give up my job. It was indeed a difficult decision, but I did it. Now, Jakarta typically is a country which is known more for its trade, and I was in the capital. Indonesia is known for trade, and Jakarta is its trade capital. So there were no opportunities for me to pursue research over there or do any kind of job. So there I was, living the life of a homemaker. Of course, I tried and enhance certain skills like cooking, which I had never gathered. So that's that. But this meant a gap in career. After coming back to India too, I did have certain family issues due to which I could not. This meant that there was a long gap, and I was planning how to get back to work. There were two options in front of me. The first, of course, being pursuing a postdoc, because when you have a long gap, science has moved forward. It's not waiting for anyone. A lot of technologies have evolved. A lot of them have even become redundant. So which means that you got to upgrade your skill sets. While I was exploring options in that, I had written up a scheme for the Women Scientist Scheme A that was offered by the Department of Biotechnology for those women who've had a gap in the career. In the interim period, what happened was that during the course of my PhD, I had filed for a patent application based on my research work. Of course, back then, I neither understood the gravity of it nor the importance. But the gentleman who did this filing was a senior PhD himself, Dr. Raj Hirvani, who was heading the Business Development Center of NCL at that point of time. Later on, Dr. Hirvani went on to start an institute all by himself, which is called Unit of Research and Development of Information Products. This is a CSIR unit which specializes in intellectual property. So what this institution basically does is it does what is known as patent analytics, and the information that is generated out of this is used both for research planning by CSIR and all research institutes of India, as well as we also generate revenue by offering consultancy to private firms. So my guide had talked about this institution, but typically being a bench worker, you're like, what is it that one can do just looking at data, and what is patent and what's one going to gain out of it? That typical kind of, disinterest a scientist shows in anything that is not related to active research work. That was my mindset too. But then with this 8-year gap, I said, why not explore and at least meet Dr. Hirvani and discuss as to what is it that they actually do. That led me to go to this institution, and I had a fantastic meeting with Dr. Hirvani, and I would like to then call this as, the chance that I took that completely changed my life. So here what I was told was that being trained and having subject domain knowledge in terms of a scientific background is a given. That is something that the institution expects the candidate to have. But once you come in here, that they would train you on searching on specialized databases for patents, and all the learning is on the job. So that's how I got into Urdu. And through the years, I completely carved a career for myself, exploring the different facets of patent analytics. Now, after working in this institution for 9 years, and of course, it's a given that, a central government job is never a permanent a job. So although I had this fantastic training and all this experience, my age and my experience were not commensurate. So there was no way I was going to get a permanent job at this place, and which was also not something that, kept me back, or that was not the main aim. It was not the driving force. But during the course of this work at ORDIP, I had also done what is called as technical due diligence. So a lot of venture companies want to invest in startups or mid people who have some kind of proven track record but want to grow big. So Mitra Biotech was one such company. Mitra Biotech had developed an in vitro platform for testing all anti-cancer drugs. I had helped this company with their technical due diligence, and due to which they had raised a venture capital of $50 million through time. So I had a good rapport with this company, and when they found out that I was no longer going to continue my tenure at Urdip, I got the opportunity to work at Mitra. Here, I completely grasped the nuances of what is involved in cancer biotech with all the. So I spent the first year, learning all the parlance and this thing of cancer biotech, and I formed their IP team along with another colleague called Padmaparna Chaudhary. After having worked for 2 years with Mitra, I then moved on to be an independent consultant, during the course of which I also talked to a company that was interested in setting up a firm for oncolytic viruses for cancer therapy. I worked with a probiotic company, and then I got this interesting opportunity at Christian Hansen. Now, Christian Hansen is a Danish company whose main product is biomass. So they're producing all these probiotics and lactic acid bacteria, which are used predominantly in dairy, but also in human health, animal health, and plant health. So I was back to my domain of microbiology. And here what I do is that I have a team wherein all the search and analysis that is required for the company for their different intellectual property work is carried out in Pune. Of course, we work with the team in Denmark, but the office is here in Pune. So now that I keep on talking about intellectual property, this talk will not be justified if I do not give you all a flavor of what intellectual property entails. So intellectual property rights are those rights which are granted to creations of the mind. Now these creations can be of different types, and here under the umbrella of IPR, what you find are patents, trademarks, copyright, industrial design, geographical indications, and trade secret. These are not mutually exclusive. In fact, for any product or any technology, it is normally advised that you try to protect your, whatever you have created or your business with as many of these as you can. But each has a particular facet that it covers. There are certain what you call there are rules, there is a duration and jurisdictions that cover them. So patents usually protect inventions. So any technical invention and a technical aspect of work is protected by a patent. Now, when I talk of trademarks, it normally refers to signs or logos. So I think each and every one of us is associated with what is called as a brand. And we are paying premiums for brand. Why is it that we want to buy a Nike shoe or an Adidas shoe? Because there is a particular quality that you feel is associated with it. And this comes, the way you identify a Nike is with that tick mark logo, and then you have the tagline associated with it. So trademarks are those rights that protect all these signs and logos, which distinguish the good of one producer from that of another. Now, copyright typically covers all your literary and artistic works, including all your music, sound, films, but your entire PhD work and thesis is also copyright. All your papers are also a form of copyright. An interesting part is you don't have to go and register it for the day you have created it, that day you have a copyright over it. Then design is the external cosmetic look of goods, especially of those goods which are produced in bulk. For example, when you look at soaps, why is it the Pure soap is oval and you have Dove in that typical oval but with a little bit of that curve? So all these designs of these goods are protected by what is known as design. Then one has also heard of a Mysore sandal soap or a Mysore silk sari, say your Kanjivaram from Tamil Nadu. So why is it that we are referring to a particular good with a particular geography? That is because either the good bears a characteristic because of the geography or the soil, or it is native to the certain population. It's like the weavers in that place, they have the art capable of making that good. Or when I'm talking of champagne, you know that the grapes that are produced in that on that French soil are rendering that specific flavor to it. So, or a Scotch whiskey. So these rights actually brand those goods, and it is the entire community of producers in that area who get that right. And then finally, we come to trade secret, which is a confidential information that a company has, which gives it gives it a certain competitive edge over others. Now, the only way a trade secret is maintained is not divulged in public. It's, for example, what is exactly the composition of the taste maker in your Maggi noodles? You don't know. But why is it that you prefer Maggi over, say, Top Ramen or certain other products? That's because of that typical umami flavor, and that is the trade secret of Nestle. But amongst all these rights, the rights that are most relevant to a scientist are that of patent, because it relates to inventions which are typically technical and they're of the domain of a scientist. Why is this data important? We do not realize that, but 70% of scientific data is actually captured as patents, because anything that is commercially viable is never revealed in a paper. It is always protected as a patent, because a patent allows you to have a monopoly over that. Why is it important that we look at this data? It's because it maps the state of the art so that we do not reinvent the wheel. We also come to know who are the competitive players in this field, who are the predominant, who are the prolific inventors, who are the assignees. Assignees means who are the top players, who are the top companies owning it. Then you find out what are the overlapping areas that different companies are, the people in the same line of business. What are their areas of overlap? The other thing about a patent is that it's a negative right. Like a patent prevents someone else to use that invention. It does not automatically give you the right to use it. It's like when you buy a car, you own the car, but you don't have the right to drive it till you get a license. So similarly, when you own a patent, you can prevent someone else from using it, but for you to use it, you have to ensure that no part of your patent has some overlap with someone else's invention. It's like Edison was not the first to invent the light bulb. You did have someone else, but he was the first to show that use of a tungsten filament will prolong the life. So either Edison had to license the patent from the original owner, or the original owner had to license the use of tungsten from Edison so that a light bulb with tungsten could be launched in the market. So this kind of analysis that you have to carry out before you launch a product is called a freedom to operate or a freedom to use. And the most important thing about a patent is that the information that you guard as a patent is always in public domain. Now, why is this? The government is giving you a certain monopoly. Why is the government doing that? Because they want that information to be public. And when it is public, it motivates the next innovator to improve upon it so that technology and science progress, but you are given a monopoly for a certain fixed amount of time. With all this background, I would like to tell you what is it that I do. So what is it that I do is I look at the entire repertoire for a particular area of research. I am asked like, okay, today we are interested in this product. So what is it? What is all the information that you can gather around it? Just like a scientist starts with a literature survey before he commences with his research project and then goes on to do his work. Similarly, anyone in the line of business first not only does a literature survey, also does a patent survey to know what is already done in that field. What are the filing trends across time? Who are the prolific inventors in that area? How is the technology moving with time? There could have been a method A to solve a problem. With time, that A may have become redundant. It could have become B, C. There are parallel technologies that are evolving with time. There are alternative ways of doing it. So that is called as a competitor and a competitive analysis. Ultimately, you find out what is the positioning of your company vis-a-vis the people around it. What are the gaps or the spaces that are still to be explored? And then within that, how can you plan your research and do the next job? In this field, I would like to discuss what are the career options. So when you're looking at it, you can be an analyst. An analyst is typically a person who's looking at all the data, and the work that I describe to you all, what is it I do? So I'm a patent analyst, and that's the work we do. Now, the patent is granted by the government, which means that there is someone called as an examiner who's sitting in the patent office who's deciding whether to grant you a patent or not, which is done on the basis of some criteria. So he is known as a patent examiner. This is a permanent post with the central government. There are 4 patent offices in India, and there are people from different technical domains who are appointed as examiners every year. The examination to qualify as a patent examiner is typically the entrance exam that you give, the net set for CSIR, what is given. You have an exam which is exactly like that. If you qualify that, then you're selected as an examiner, and then you're trained as to how to examine patents. It's a very lucrative job, and one should look at the patent office and look out for these advertisements and try and take these exams. There is yet another post which is known as a patent attorney. Now there are 2 kinds of attorneys. One who just handles the filing. So typically a patent document has a particular style and a particular format and a language in which it is to be written. So an attorney knows that in order to qualify as an attorney, again, you have to take the exam, which is known as the Indian Patent Law exam, and that is conducted once a year. But as a patent examiner, you can only do you can monitor everything that is required from filing to the grant of the patent. But in case there is a battle between two companies, which is normally known as an infringement battle, like the famous ones you would have heard are between Samsung and Apple, at that time, the person who goes and litigates at court is someone who has an LLB degree. So if you're ambitious and you like this field, after clearing the bar exam here, you could also go on to move to become a full-fledged lawyer, which can, which then you can litigate in court in patent cases. Yet another option is evaluator. So every time a small company is acquired by a big one, or there are mergers between two companies, at that time, the important thing that you want to get are the patent and all the intellectual property assets. But when you're buying that, just like when you're selling capital goods, there is a particular valuation for the capital goods and the land. There is an entire methodology by which you valuate patents. So for this, definitely, in addition to your science and all this background, you need to have qualifications in the field of finance. And the ultimate dream of everyone is to become a consultant, wherein you have an expertise in multiple of these areas and you can advise companies. This comes with a huge experience in this field with time. So I have just mapped out a few skill sets that are required by anyone who wants to get into this field. At least a master's degree is a must, preferably a PhD. That definitely offers a lot of advantage compared to being a master's. A strong subject domain expertise is an absolute given. There is no compromise in that. Because all patent documents are technical documents. If you do not understand the science behind it, there is no point in reading that document. Then you do need to have training in data mining, curating, and analysis, because there are specialized databases for patent data mining, and you have to understand the process. So there are institutions and places where you can get such training. A good command over English, whether it is oral, written, and good visual presentation skills. Now, why is this important? Because all patents are written world over. The predominant language is English. It's a techno-legal language, so there are a lot of punctuations which have different interpretations. You should be able to interpret that meaning and that nuance correctly. You are expected as an agent to offer a lot of explanation and consultation, which is why you have to have good communication skills. And ultimately, in today's world, if you cannot present your data in an exciting and pictorial manner, people don't want to look at it. You must understand patent law, and it should be both local and global. You cannot say I'm an expert only in Indian, because today all technology and all trade is global. Again, there are programs for this, and it helps to have additional qualifications like LLB, MBA, or like I said, patent law, anything that is allied for super specialization in this field. I have also enumerated a few courses to begin with, to just get you a flavor of what is intellectual property. You have a postgraduate diploma in IPR from NALSAR. It's a distance learning course. There are certain other distance learning courses also. WIPO, that is the World Intellectual Property Office, has a lot of free and paid distance learning courses. They're very interesting, and they're very competitive in price. One can opt for that also. There are some institutions which run a one-year program in patent informatics. One of them is the OoC scheme, which is specifically for women who've had a break in a career. So these are for women, and this is a one-year rigorous training program in this field. In fact, you are given a scholarship to pursue this, as against the others where you are expected to pay fees. Then at URDIP, there is also a course in patent informatics, which is also a one-year postgraduate diploma in patent informatics. So these are just a few courses that I have shared with all of you. So I think with this, I end my formal presentation. And thank you so much for a patient hearing. And I'm looking forward to all answering questions and having a great discussion with all of you.
Thank you, Sangeeta. to facilitate better discussion, for this series we have introduced a discussion. So the discussion, my colleague Deepika Sharma will ask you a few questions. After that, it will be open for the audience to have a Q&A with you. Deepika?
Thank you, Bitasta, and thank you, Sangeeta, for a really informative talk, complete with resources and so on, and constructive, practical advice for what people can follow up on if they would like to. But I'd like to rewind slightly to focus on your personal journey, and I want to start by asking what brought you to science in the first place. You mentioned that your area was fermentation technology. I mean, you said that you were really inspired by Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, but were you already in science at that point, or was that really the reason you decided to pursue science?
Actually, I have to rewind to 12th grade. So 11th and 12th, of course, I continued with science, because at that point of time, at home, most of the times our discussions were to do with science. Right from childhood, we read books on discoveries, and I was like one of the biggest fans of Marie Curie. So there was no doubt in my mind that that I want to build a career in science. And while, of course, typically during my time, most people aspired to either be a doctor or an engineer. But I was always on the lookout for what is different, because I didn't want to be run of the mill. And my father got 2 books home. One was Gene by Benjamin Lewin, and the other book he purchased was Biotechnology. It was a book on industrial biotechnology. Okay. So during the vacation, I read those books. And that's when I told my father, I want to do research. So what does one do to get into this field was what was the thought. And then I spoke to a few of my teachers, and they said, oh, I think you have to major in chemistry or something. It was all garbled. Some people told zoology, some said chemistry. And then I had a senior who was pursuing microbiology. So I said, this area seems to be something fascinating and different. So let's give that a chance. And of course, from what I read in industrial biotechnology, everything was to do with microorganisms, because it was fermentation science in detail. Right. So that's what got me to pursue biotechnology. And then while studying microbiology, of course, at that time, then you had India Today and all these articles. So there were a lot of articles about Kiran. So then I said, and very ambitiously and naively at that age, I thought I too would like to start some biotech venture of my own. So the first step is you go and work in Biocon, then you get trained, and then at some point I'll start my venture. So that was life by the plans.
Right. So what was it about your work, both when you were studying, when you were doing your PhD at NCL, and when you were working at Biocon? What was it about the work that fascinated you the most?
I think the fact that every day there is something new happening. So the first thing exciting is that the work is never monotonous. I mean, I think there is no such thing as routine work in research. There is always scope for improvement. There is always scope for trying out something new. But between discovery science and application science, for some reason, it was application science that intrigued me more, because I come from a background where my father was a part of industry, and it was always, talking about, okay, what's the results? What are the results? What are the results? How is it going to benefit mankind? So there was always this afterthought of application that was focused on. So that got me more focused. And of course, in industry, all research is timed. There is no endless money to pour, and there is no this. So if it does not achieve results in a stipulated period of time, then they abandon the project and move on to the next. So I was quite okay with all that. It was very focused, directed application work.
Right. So what was it like to then have to step away from from your plans, from work that you had done over years, from plans that you had built to start your own venture and so on? What was that like? And I mean, I'm so glad we have you on the talk today, because we've had a range of people in this Sutradhar series. And most of the other speakers so far in the series, for them it was more like they either didn't complete their PhD or completed their PhD and moved into a different field, either because they had maybe not a crisis of faith exactly, but felt like perhaps this is not a field that I want to continue in, and so on. But for you, you had a plan, and you had every intention to continue in that plan. But as you said, life had other plans for you, and it's also in the grand scheme of things, it's more often women who have to, who end up having to take career breaks, either because they have to care for family or, for other reasons. So I just wanted to ask, over the years, the 8 years or so that you took a break, what was it like for you? What did you go through? And how did you keep yourself, from all the things that you loved about your work, were you able to find it in other ways during your break?
Very honestly, went through an entire gamut of emotions. Initially, the shock didn't hit me because there it was like moving and, you're looking after your child and certain priorities. But within 6 months of doing that, there was a complete vacuum. There was a total, I could not relate to most things around me because I love science. I loved going to work. There was no way I wanted to be at home. And it was a tough call, tough things. I had to find alternate ways to, this my time. And when I came back, so although it seems 8 years, there were a lot of steps in that. The first 4 years were in Jakarta. When I came back, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. So 2 years went in looking after her. And after that, again, when I decided to get back to work, so I have a son who's 25 and a daughter who's 15. So the second time I got pregnant was just the 7th year of my break. So I had written up a research scheme to get back to bench work, because then still intellectual property was not on my mind. I still wanted to do a postdoc. And I had written up this entire research scheme, and I was due to join. And the previous day, before I was due to join, the previous night I discovered I was pregnant again. So there, bang, one more break. So in all this, there is an entire journey of self-doubt that I went through. I'm going to be very honest about it and share it with all. Yes, there is a lot of self-doubt that you go through. Can you do it? Do you have the discipline? Do you have the acumen? Everyone has gone forward. Science has gone forward. So many things have changed. But I would like to say with full confidence to everyone that if you are a person who has gone through the grind of a PhD, or most of it, you may have even left it incomplete at some point of time, but if you've gone through the grind for quite some time, you are of an analytical mind. PhD is not just solving a specific problem, but it's an ability to solve problems, to look at it differently, to look at it from various dimensions and creatively find a solution. So it is that kept me alive, and that told me that no, I can't lose it all. Definitely there is something that I have that I can contribute, and let's see if we can do it in another way, if not this. So getting into this field was a conscious decision, not because I lacked in certain this. I did have the opportunity to go back into a wet lab if I wanted to do by pursuing a postdoc. But at that time, the thought in my mind was, what if there is an opportunity to have a more flexible career, wherein my timings and my physical presence is not always required? The beauty of the field that I have chosen is I'm looking at cutting edge technology. I'm reading up everything that is of use and of importance today. So today it may be something to do with cancer, tomorrow it may be something to do with oncolytic virus, day after it may be something to do with CAR T. So I am looking at all that without having to actually, be there in the lab every day. I can creatively contribute. No scientist is going to deny if I have some scientific input in that. And being in this field means you have to be science plus, you have to understand science and you have to understand law. But despite all this, all I need is some smartphone or laptop or computer and internet connectivity. I can work from Antarctica. No one would care as long as I can deliver. So that was something that I found extremely exciting and I grabbed the opportunity.
So this really brings me to my last question before we open it up to people in the audience to ask their questions. And you have answered this in a sense, but what about the work that you loved before you had to take your break? What about it have you been, what aspects of it do you find again in your work now? And do you see in some sense a line of continuity between then and now?
Yes, I do. Because now, after a long time, I have gone back to a biotechnology company, which is in the field of fermentation and producing biomass. So I'm back to where I was. And yes, it was fun working with all the cutting edge and everything. But here, it's something that I can relate most closely to. I'm looking at all sorts. So to give a slight background, although I'm doing the search and analysis here, sitting in Pune, Pune has a tech center. Okay, so we do have 14 scientists here with all the equipment and fermenters and all kinds of analysis, GCMS and this thing. And of course, now a molecular biology lab is also being set up here for this. So every day I'm looking at the new ways of running all those experiments, the new ways of this thing. Then you have robotic machines which are doing a lot of assays which we used to do manually, or even the fermentations at micro levels. So you have biolector which is fermenting it right from 1 ml to this thing. I'm seeing all that. So it's very exciting. It's a very open place. I get to go and see the lab. I'm surfing through all the result sets to see if there is any IP that could be got out of it. So I'm looking at data. Except that I'm looking at it differently. I'm not looking at it from a publication point of view or this point of view. I'm looking at it from a curating point of view as to what aspect of it is unique and what is it that I can safeguard. So in a way, it's a really win-win situation. I don't have to face the rigor of a lab and come at odd hours to do the additions, but I'm having the fun of looking at all the results.
Right. What do you love most about your work right now?
I think it's the same. There are no 2 days which are the same. It's not at all monotonous. So every day there are different results and this thing, and there are exciting things. I have plans, expansion plans, like although you began only with patents, ultimately this unit has to become a one-stop shop for search for the company, so that tomorrow if they want business analytics done or they want some market analytics done, all that can be done from Pune, from India. So we can build a team of expertise with those people. So that's what I find exciting. There's scope for growth.
Thank you very much, Sangeeta. We'll leave it open now for people to ask questions. You could either put your questions in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and ask your question.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Sangeeta. You can hear me, right?
Yes, yes. Hello, Ishita.
Hi. The talk was really amazing. Got to know a lot about patent, not just the term, but a lot of opportunities. My question is, you talked about something called technical due diligence. What exactly is it? Is it a field in patent analytics? If so, like, what is the kind of work being done there?
Okay, so there is no specific position carved off, or there's no specific course, but during my tenure at URDIP, there were these venture capitalists, okay, who were interested in funding startups. So they wanted this, they just carved this thing called as technical due diligence. So what is it to broadly define? If someone wants to put money in a particular venture, there are two things he's going to look at. One is he's going to look at the finances part of it. And the second is he's going to look out if he's going to evaluate if the technology is robust enough for him to invest in. So now when we had this venture capitalist approach, URDIP, the finance part was not given to us, only the technology part was given. So how do you define technical due diligence? First and foremost, you look at whether that company whom you're evaluating, whether do they have any patents themselves, or is their work so good or unique that you can carve out something from it and file for a patent. If they have filed a patent, well, in what stage of prosecution and what are the chances that they have to get it granted? Also, do they have a freedom to operate? What are the other, rights? Are we going to trespass on someone else's right? Then you have to also look at who are all the players in this field. Do you have someone so big that they're just going to gobble you up, or is it that you can find a niche? Then for the same, so that is called as a competitor analysis. Then another thing that you carve out is a competitive, as in you have a particular way of solving this problem, but are there parallel ways in which you could look at it? It's like, for example, let us take the COVID vaccine. So someone used an attenuated vaccine, someone used a killed virus for it, some people used the RNA part, some particular proteins. There are so many ways in which you could have built a vaccine for COVID, and different companies exploited different strategies, all working towards the same. So as a due diligence person, you should be able to identify each of these, the pros and cons of each of these, and how then your technology or the one in which they want to invest will match against all these and will stand the test of time. This is what is required in a technology due diligence analysis.
Okay, I understood. Thank you so much. I have another question, Dr. Sangeeta. With respect to copyright, you mentioned that for researchers' point of view, we get a copyright since the day we created a technology. But you mean that the
Not
day
the
we
technology,
publish
the
it,
document,
right?
the day you either you
Yeah.
have published a paper or you've written a thesis or even presented a poster, that matter which is there on it is copyrighted. Now, typically a copyright means no one can make copies of it, means no one can distribute your paper without your permission, or nobody can make prints of your matter. It does not refer to the science in it. It just refers to that data that is being presented there.
So, can they use the technology that we have and create some other thing with that and publish a paper?
Yes, they can. They can be inspired by your work and do. If you want to guard your technology that is there within it, then you have to file a patent. The only thing that precludes them from this thing is the fact. Then again, in case of research, there is something called as a research exception. Like, for example, even if a technology is patented, a laboratory which is conducting research for non-commercial purposes and for academic purpose is allowed to use the patent technology, but as long as it's for non-commercial use.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Anjuma, go on.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Dr. Sangeeta, for a wonderful talk. I just wanted to know some of the courses that you have mentioned. In India, most of these grants or things like that are limited through age. How many of the courses that are available to do to kind of diversify, perhaps much later after your PhD, how many of these are actually age restricted?
I don't think.
Or is it that they are not?
None of these have age limits.
Okay.
Only the OoC scheme has an age
Yeah,
limit
I think that has one.
50 years.
Okay. Okay, but the others are not.
No, none of the others have, because they're all private courses, so there is no age limit to it.
Okay.
I think there are no questions. So we thank you, Sangeeta, for talking so candidly about your journey and giving us such detailed information about the field. This is exactly the focus of this series, to understand the journey, how people have not let obstacle stop them, and they have carved out a niche for themselves. Thank you so much for talking so beautifully and giving us such a elaborate description of your journey. Thank you so much.
My complete pleasure. And I hope, I think this talk will serve its purpose if I have inspired someone to explore something in this field. And Vitasa, I wouldn't mind sharing my slide deck so that people can take a look at the course and this thing if they're keen on doing so.
Sure.
I'm open
You
to
can send it to her. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure talking to all of you.